Hello friends, and welcome to another episode of Booked, a place to explore the realms of creativity. I'm delighted to introduce you to today's guest, Katelyn Yates. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. I'm very excited to talk about my writing with you. Thanks for this opportunity.
Oh, you're so welcome. Honestly, it's such a pleasure, and I know we've spoken before, and you've been very active in supporting what I'm doing on Twitter. So thank you so much. I'm going to keep calling it Twitter, and I will say that every time.
I think it's my favorite hybrid that I've seen is Twix.
Oh yeah, isn't that a cookie biscuit? Yes, a chocolate bar. Isn't it a cookie biscuit? I think I'm a cookie biscuit. Oh my goodness. This will be a fun episode, I think. Okay, so I recently read your book, Mad Marienne. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yes, you did.
Oh God, points for me. It was excellent. It was excellent. I've said this before, and I don't know what it is about the indie writing community, or if I've just found a good group of people, but you guys have changed my mind about fantasy style books. Honestly, it was excellent. I really, really enjoyed it. You're so naturally good at this, writing and just being descriptive and creating worlds, and it's so polished and excellent. And I'm just thank you so much for writing it, because it was a joy to read. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about the book? Well, I wouldn't lie. There's no point. I just say you wrote a book. Honestly, it was
yes, but people think it's good, and that's the exciting part.
It was very exciting, and I don't know what I expected. I think I always go in with like a the only word I can think of is force field. Expectations about what I think a fantasy book is going to be, because I personally find it very challenging to read, because you have to keep up with stuff that's new, and it's like it's fantastical, isn't it? It's stuff that you don't come into contact with in real life, so you have to remember what these things are. But you've done a very, very good job of making it so friendly to read as well. So that I don't give away any spoilers, could you tell our listeners a little bit about the plot or the story or whatever you want to tell them?
Yeah. So Mad Marienne is a steampunk sky pirate adventure for typically young adult readers, but I've marketed it as 14 and up. I have had people of all ages read it and love it. In fact, this very sweet old lady from my mother's book club left a really nice review on Amazon of like, I'm pushing 90 and I loved this. And like,
that's so nice. I love that.
Yeah, she's so sweet. And it follows, so for those who don't know what steampunk is, it's an alternate historical fiction, meaning that it's kind of Victorian era, but they have advanced technology that they didn't actually have in the Victorian era. So it follows a young woman named Catherine. She's an indentured maid to this Luma baron. Luma is the thing that makes everything tick, essentially. And she's having a very bad time being an indentured maid, and she's been separated from her brother. So she just wants to pay off her debt and get reunited with her brother. But then she is kidnapped by sky pirates, who say, if you join our crew, then we can help you find your brother anyway. And they go off on a grand adventure, and it is just so much fun, and I love it. And it's got, adventure and romance and mechanical animals.
It's, oh my God, I love that so much. It was so good. When I was trying to figure out what Luma was, it was this, I don't know, it feels very, very magical.
Mm-hmm.
A very, very magical element, which is like the thing that powers all stuff.
Yeah.
What made you come up with that as an element? Because it's quite heavily used, obviously, throughout the book, because it's right. Powers the whole world, right?
So that goes back to when I first started writing this story, which was way back in high school. And so, like, goodness, I can't math right now.
That's okay.
I graduated in 2012, so like that kind of era, and it started as just like this fun little thing between me and my friends of like, oh, if we were pirates, what would we do? And it started off as like a historical fiction, like we were nautical pirates on the ocean, And my friends enjoyed it so much. I would like write a chapter and then print it out and bring it to them at school and like distribute it. It was like the most high school thing ever, but it
That's
was
so cool.
so much fun. And I was like, hey, I think I could actually turn this into a book, but I don't like how the pirates are not acting historically. Like they weren't ruthless, they weren't, nearly cutthroat enough and that kind of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of making my pirates more piratey, I was like, I can just completely change the setting and do
Mm-hmm.
whatever I want. Because
Which you
nobody can
did.
tell me what pirates do in a steampunk setting because I get to decide what pirates do in a steampunk setting. But then I had these kind of like two related questions because I was like, sky pirates, it's going to be so cool. And this is kind of how I approach all world building is like, this thing is going to be cool. Now, why and how?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember a specific instant of this being like, oh, here's the answer. But the like, why are the pirates in the sky instead of actually on the water? And how is all this steampunk
Mm-hmm.
machinery working? So, like, why does this world have this advanced technology that our Victorian era didn't? And Luma kind of became the answer to both.
Mm-hmm.
So Luma, it comes from the sky. It is, minor spoiler alert, it is starlight.
Mm-hmm.
And so because it is collected in the sky, that's where the pirates have gone to steal it. And then
Yeah.
they sell it. So that was a really fun thing to come up with as this answer to multiple questions for my world building.
It's so good because it leaves no questions. I think it was fantastic, and I can so see this becoming a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic. So, in terms of the sort of where this series is going, because it's part of a series. Do you know
Yes.
how long it's going to go on for? Have you already plotted it out? How long have you been thinking about it?
Yeah, so I have 4 books planned in the series.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been working on it on and off since that high school time and through college. Um, and I decided that I kind of want to play with the genre of the
Mm-hmm.
world and see how the technology advances. So the genre is going to shift very slightly between each book, and you're going to
Okay.
get kind of a different feel of how this magic is working in the world and how the technology progresses. So I have an idea of like, this is the setting that I want for each book. And from there kind of came like, okay, here's what the characters are doing and how they connect to these other books. So I have sort of this overarching idea, but I'm more of a pantser than a plotter.
Same.
So I've got like these like really big, like, okay, these are like the plot points I have to hit. And when I get there, I'll tie the red string between them. I
So,
often feel like that meme of the guy like with the wall just plastered of like,
oh, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Yes,
yes, that one.
it's excellent. Yeah, I feel very similarly because I find that it's much easier for me to go, okay, big idea, quickly get it all out, and then I scribble it all down, and I'm like, okay, so let's read it back, and then I read it back, and I think, is that English as people know it, or is this made up gibberish? Often gibberish. So how do you keep track of stuff? Because when writing anything that has these sort of made up fantastical elements, I mean, you could easily not keep track of it. I suppose nobody would know. But do you have like a plan? Do you sort of write stuff down like, oh, I must remember this is how this works? Because I know that you've got concept art,
Yeah.
which will be available on your author feature, which I loved. It was very, very cool.
Yeah, just real quick shout out. Some of that concept art was done by one of my beta readers, Ben Latner, and like he did an amazing job. He had like that perfect intersection of knowledge between like reading my book and knowing intimately like 17th, 18th century nautical ships.
Yeah.
He's like, this was just a like hobby of mine when I was younger. I'm like, great, you have like nailed the concept of what I was thinking.
Excellent.
It was awesome. So yeah, so keeping track of essentially lore related stuff. Whenever I start a new writing notebook, which I usually only handwrite for like snippets or scenes or when I need to brainstorm, if I have anything lore related for my works in progress, I put that in the first few pages. So like I can quickly go back and refer to it. One of my works in progress is a more like fantasy. I can never get high and low fantasy like straight. I can never remember which is which, but it is more like that stereotypical fantasy. And it has a pantheon. So one of the first things I write down is this is the pantheon. And their like domains. Means. Oh, it's a group of gods.
Oh, okay, thank you. I've learned something today. Every day's a school day.
So I write down like this is each of the gods, and this is kind of their domain and what they do, and that sort of thing, so that I can quickly refer back to it. And then the other tool and resource that I use is Scrivener. That's my word processor of choice, and it has some really great like UI functions to help like quickly jot down notes or have like a research resource that you can always go back to and refer to. So that's been really, really helpful.
Is it free or do you have to pay for it?
It's paid, but it's a one-time payment, and they don't restrict how many devices you can put it on, or at least not the one that I had. So
that's cool.
But I bought it like 12 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So, and have you used it for 12 years?
Yeah. I've used it that entire time.
Wow. What would happen if it got taken away? What would you do?
Oh, I would lament. It is like because it's created for authors. Yeah. Like it's just designed and set up in such a way that I haven't found anything else like it. Not that I've digged for anything else like it, because I already have it. But they did do a recent update where they're like, we're no longer providing updates for the old one. You can update to the new one. And I like resisted for so long. I was like, do not take this from me. What if something goes wrong? I have like that millennial distrust of technology.
Oh, I feel you. I always have a whatever device I'm using. If I have tabs open, I always put it to sleep. I'm sorry, Mother Earth. I'm sure that's terrible for you.
No, I do too. I keep tabs open things. All the time.
All the time, even though I know they're fine. I can find them again, and I think if I save them to my favorites, what if somebody hacks into my favorites and deletes them all? But if the tabs are untouchable, and then if it shuts itself down, I shed a tear.
Why? Why have you done this to me? Forced update.
Visceral reaction for me. It's awful. It's awful. Same with tabs on my phone usually, but I try and clear those out because usually it's like, oh, I was looking for freezer safe Tupperware. I must remember that I was looking for that because I've stopped being interested now. Oh my goodness. So I remember you talking to me about Scrivener before. We were discussing notebooks or something along those lines. I like typing things because I like being able to like grab stuff and move it around.
Yeah.
But there is something deeply satisfying about using a notebook.
I find that I brainstorm best.
Yeah.
I brainstorm best with handwriting. And if I have like a sudden burst of inspiration, usually I will write it down. Sometimes I'll type it on my phone, but usually I'll write it down in my notebook.
Do you ever create little drawings with your ideas? Yeah.
Yes. Particularly my characters. I enjoy drawing and art, and that's just a little side hobby of mine. I don't consider myself very good, but I will doodle my characters.
That must be helpful for putting yourself in their shoes to create their adventures, right?
Yeah.
I was wondering, and it's okay if you don't have an answer to this. Are you just naturally really, really good at writing, or is it something that you've had to learn over time?
As long as I can remember, it's something I've enjoyed. And I think that's the secret to being good at something, right? Is that you enjoy it and you're willing to put in the time and work for it, right? Because I've talked to one of my best friends who also writes, and she's like, I can remember back to, back in grade school when I was writing, and it helped me remember. I was like, oh yeah, like back in 5th grade, we would do journal prompt writing exercises, and one of them was descriptive writing. And I wrote this scene about somebody trying to dive off of the diving board at a pool, and I described like the rough diving board. And my teacher made a note of that. He's like, very good description. So I'm like, it is something that I've always enjoyed.
That's amazing. And I think it's fantastic that it's something that you do it full time now, right?
I put full time in air quotes. I tell people I'm self-employed in writing
You are.
because I get to set my own schedule, and if that's 1 hour a day, that's what I do.
But the thing is that not only are you self-employed, you're a self-employed writer, marketer, salesperson,
Mm-hmm.
and various other public speaking. I'm going to call it public speaking going on social media because it basically is. It's just in writing.
Yeah.
Which is incredibly hard. Like being a writer anyway is not for the faint of heart. No, very,
Right.
very, 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 very tiny percentage of writers make enough so that they can, buy property or whatever.
Right.
That was such a really specific thing. I just remembered you saying that you moved house, and I was like, houses? What do people do with houses? And
Oh yeah, no, I am
kind of
fully supported by my husband, both like financially and emotionally. He is
same,
completely there for me.
But no, it's not like it's not the easiest thing to do ever.
No.
And doing anything, especially if it's art, is challenging because you don't always for me anyway. There are some writers that I've spoken to, I'm getting somewhere with this, I promise. There are some writers that I've spoken to where they're like, every day I get up, I write 500 words, or I make myself write every day. Sometimes I can't do it. I can't do it every day. Like, even if I really, really love something, I can't force myself to do it every day because it's not there. The steam's not there. There was a writer, Hugh Steer, that I spoke to. I think when people are listening to this, he'll have been the guest last week. He said that he'll write something where somebody will go on a journey and it won't really go anywhere specific, but it's just to keep his sort of hand in with writing. I can't do it. I just sit there and be sad. I'm just sad. If I can't, sometimes I just get under a blanket and I read instead because it's easier. Do you write every day?
I try to. So I am in an interesting in-between position right now because I'm working on the sequel to Mad Marienne. It's called Square Jaw Jordan. It'll be out sometime.
Eventually it will be out.
Eventually. And right now it's with my beta readers.
Oh,
and so
exciting.
It's very exciting. I love getting their feedback. They're so fun to talk to. Completely side note, one of them, I was like, hey, please send me your reactions as you're reading because I live for that. I love that so much. And she took it to heart. She was sending me Snapchats like every 5 minutes. And it was so great. It was so fun. But right now, because I'm not working on that project and I don't want to get into another deep project just to stop it and have to go back to Square Jaw Jordan, I am just doing whatever comes to mind. So I was actually writing fan fiction. And then I got stuck on that, so I switched to like this very bizarre short story concept that's been in my mind and lately has been like just ready to write. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm writing this now. And it's nice because I don't care about it, so it can be whatever it is.
That's cool. Do you find it much easier to work on one thing at once? Or do you have like several things on the go?
No, I have kind of one thing at once. And like I have ideas and projects that I've started that are, either unfinished or on the back burner or something. And I'll get like little ideas for them of like, oh yeah, here's how to fix that plot hole, or here's what should happen next. And those are the ones I write down in my notebook. But then I always make sure to get back to what my main project is because I can't like leave something half done.
You and I are possibly very, very, very opposite because I am the queen of leaving things not finished. It's like my jam. I'm like, big idea, let's go at this 24/7. I'm going to exhaust myself and then I'll hate it and then I won't finish it. That's my jam, which is why my book is still in progress and will be for years to come, probably.
There's one that I started back when NaNoWriMo was a thing, and it was NaNoWriMo. It's a very fun, like, tongue-in-cheek fairy tale concept.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got stuck. I was like, I don't actually know where this is ending.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how to plan the heist that needs to happen. And so it's just been sitting there unfinished for years, and it is the telltale heart under my floorboards. I'm like, it's just back there in the back of my mind, like, I am not finished yet. And I'm like, I know. I know, but I still don't know how to do this heist.
Is it something that you hope that you will finish one day, or is it just going to be your dirty secret that you keep in the cupboard?
No, it's one that I want to finish. It's on my like list of books I want to publish because it is a really, really fun concept.
What? So have you got a list of things that you want to publish?
Yeah.
Will you tell me about it? Can I hear about it? I'd love to. It's okay if it's
know where my notebook went.
That's okay. Are there lots? Is it a lot of stuff?
It's about 10.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I've got the quartet that I'm working on, and then the fantasy, and then this kind of fairy tale, tongue-in-cheek one that just plays on a lot of tropes, which is fun. I have one that's a modern fantasy that might end up being a trilogy. We'll see where that one goes. And then another, like, not quite modern fantasy, but like modern speculative. That's kind of based on like the Red String of Fate. And I think that's all. Oh, and then one that I'm not sure if I like what format I want it to be, because I could see it being a really fun like play. Oh, that's another like modern speculative about twins.
So have you prioritized them in order of like importance to you to get out? Okay.
Yeah, cool. So I feel a little bad, but not enough, because I'm going to finish the second book in the quartet that I'm writing, and then I'm not going to continue the quartet. I'm going to go to my fantasy next, because that one's the other one that I've been working on the longest. I know. And then I will come back and finish the quartet.
Okay. Are you going to leave the readers with a cliffhanger in book 2?
No. So the interesting thing about book 2 is that it's actually a prequel, and it's not the same characters.
Okay.
But I have already had people being like, having finished Mad Marienne, I need to know what happens next. And I'm like, I'm sorry, it's going to be 3 books out.
Well, just be careful then if you get stuck into these books. There may be a short period of time, of years maybe, before Katelyn gets them out. That's fine. So from the point that you obviously started working on Mad Marienne, my mouth wanted to go Marion, and I was like, that's not right. Say it right.
It's close enough.
I tried. A number of years ago is when you started it. So at what point did you go, okay, this is going to be a published book now. I need to get it into a place where it's going to become a published work, where I can get it printed. So how long did that sort of period of time last?
So I started it in high school around 2011, I believe.
Yeah.
And was working on it on and off for years and years. And then in 2020, so at the start of the pandemic, like March, April of 2020, I actually became very, very sick. Not COVID related. I was diagnosed with an extremely rare blood disorder called aplastic anemia, where my bone marrow just stopped working. It's like essentially non-cancerous leukemia.
Katelyn, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was a wild experience. I passed out, was rushed to the hospital, had like 5 bags of blood pumped into me because I had no blood.
What the
and it was wild. And then in July of 2020, I had a bone marrow transplant. My brother was a 100% match as my donor. So just like absolutely wonderful experience in the midst of this bizarre, really difficult time. And because it was the pandemic, I couldn't have any visitors at the hospital, and that was the hardest part. And it took me a while to recover, because something like that is not easy to recover. So I tried going back to my teaching job in 2021, and I was like, I am not well enough for this. So I quit and decided I'm just going to start being a full-time writer. It's what I've always wanted, and I feel like this time is right, and I'm not healthy enough to do much else. So I sat down about April of 2022 and started like rewriting and going through the process and editing and beta readers and all of that, and I published August of 2023.
Wow, that's wild. That's very cool. That's a very fast turnaround, really.
But like, I had been working on it for so long leading up to this that I was like, I know what I wanted to do.
So what was your did you make a conscious effort, of course you made a conscious effort. That was not the question I meant to ask. My brain is constantly buffering, and sometimes it doesn't catch up with itself, and I'm like, say words, just any words, just make noise, and something might happen after that, and then you'll ask an actual question. Oh my goodness. What I meant to ask was, did you initially think that you were going to self-publish, or did you go through the querying process? Like, how did that end up?
I tried querying for like a month.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, we'll see how this goes. And my friend at the time had actually been to, I don't remember if it was like Fan X or a writing retreat or something, where she had seen an author panel, and they were talking about the differences between traditional publishing and self-publishing. So she was kind of passing that information on to me. And the more I thought of it, I was like, I actually really want to be in charge of my own stuff.
Oh, okay.
I knew exactly what I wanted the cover to look like, and was fortunate enough to know a traditional oil painter. So I asked him to paint my cover.
It's an oil painting. That's amazing. No wonder it's so gorgeous.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What the heck?
And I would really, really like him to do all of my covers. But yeah, so, and then like, I knew I wanted this to be a series. I knew I wanted this to be my first published book.
Yeah.
And I was like, if I go the traditional route and it doesn't do well, they can shut down my IP. And I won't be able to publish the rest of the series. And I am not done with these characters. They have more to do. So that felt right to me. And I've really enjoyed self-publishing. I like being in charge of my own stuff.
That's cool.
And then that way, if my books don't sell, like, that's on me. The only person I can blame is me, and I know the amount of effort I'm putting forth, so the return is, I'm not as stressed about it because there's nobody else in the chain of command here.
Well, that's true. And I suppose if everything falls with you, then you can go, okay, well, this didn't work, and make a very swift U-turn, or,
right,
figure out, okay, so let me try these 3 things, and, this one's going to work the best, so we're going to keep doing that. I mean, it's a huge expense for people to market their work. And I know social media is a really, really good tool for marketing and stuff. How do you actually get your book to people? Are you active in particular groups? Do you use specific types of social media? Do you go to events? I'm going to let you talk now because I'm basically listing things.
No, that's all right. I'm not going to talk very long because the answer is no.
Okay, good.
I'm so garbage at marketing. Like the fact that like me saying, oh, that's on me, it's because I know I am really bad at marketing. I don't want to put in the effort. So I did my mom helped me.
Oh, go your mom. Yay, that's nice.
She found out that her local library, which is back in California, I am in Utah. The local library in California was doing a local author event. And she contacted them and is like, hey, are they still local if they grew up here and don't live here anymore? And they said yes. So I went to that, and that was a lot of fun. But the other thing that, like, and I really should have one nearby, and I do. Haha. The biggest one for me is I printed out bookmarks.
Oh, Oh, they're cute.
And they have a QR code on the back that take you to the Amazon page. And that's been like my favorite way, is because like I'll just keep a handful of those in my purse. And then like when it comes up in conversation, I can just be like, hey.
That's smart.
So that you can remember and get it later, or you can scan the QR code and get it now.
Are you like, you can scan it now if you like. You can. I'll wait.
I'll just...
don't let me interrupt you buying it. Just go ahead. I'll wait.
When I first published, and this was, you know, August 2023, so Amazon was still doing that thing where like the ebook published right away, but like the paperback had to wait.
Oh yeah.
We actually had a neighborhood picnic like the day my ebook went up for pre-order.
Oh wow.
And so I was like, I didn't have any bookmarks yet because the link wasn't up yet. So I was just like going around with my phone. I was like, guys, do you want to pre-order my book?
Oh. Did it work?
Yes.
Oh, great. Excellent. So that's what we need to do, is organize events, disguise it as a picnic.
Yeah.
And then say, oh, I've written a book. Do you want to buy it? And then people it's very hard for people to say no to your face.
Right.
So do you see yourself doing any more events if they were to come up, or going to like conventions? I know they're quite a big deal, and I understand that if you know, physically it's quite demanding as well.
I would love to do more events. I think it's a lot of fun, even just like talking to people and you know, getting them interested, whether in your book or in any other, right? I just think being in person is a lot of fun. I am very much an extrovert in that way.
Oh, I'm not.
I think it's kind of unusual among authors.
It is. Authors are like, please don't talk to me, just read my book, and they slide it across the thing.
And I'm like, no, I will talk to you all day long.
Oh, that's nice. That's your marketing tool.
Exactly. It's the individual connection. I can't do social media. There is a local bookstore that I have not approached yet, but I do have like mutual friends with the owner, so I might go that route and be like, hey, you should carry my book.
That is a great idea, because there are independent bookstores that have like very few rules other than whether or not they think either they're going to be able to sell it, or do they like it enough to believe in it. There are, I think I just did like a preliminary search. That was a hard word to get out of my mouth. Around my local area, because I've only been in the country for a few months, and there was a surprising number of independent bookstores, but because they're so small and they don't have the money for marketing,
right,
I didn't know they were there. Whereas like Barnes and Noble, for example, if you wanted them to actually stock your book in the store, you have to go through quite a lot of hoops, and then it has to go to like the buyer of the books, and then if they like it, then they'll sell it. But it's such a subjective thing.
Yeah.
Really, really challenging for a lot of writers, I imagine.
I saw, this was, I think, over the summer, an article that, I'm going to say, in quotes, a local indie bookstore had popped up, because it's like 2 hours away from where but I was like, oh, I wonder what other local bookstores are in the state. And so I looked them up, and I was like, I should just do an indie bookstore tour and just like take a day, drive down and drive back, and be like, here's my sell sheet. Do you want to stock my book?
That's a great idea.
And I think that would be a lot of fun. Road trip with friends.
Oh, that's such a good idea. And maybe, you could say, okay, one of us has to buy a book in every store, and then you can have like a big book haul, and then just sit under blankets and read the books.
That would be so much fun.
Yeah.
There's your idea, listeners.
There you go. If you're having trouble figuring out what to do for a vacation, tour of indie bookstores, buy a book in every store.
Yep.
Go read the books.
Go somewhere comfy, read the books.
Final step, success. So other than the marketing part, which is the thing I think that almost every single indie writer absolutely detests, because everyone's excited about writing a book and getting the book out there, and then imagining that everyone's going to read it, and then they actually have to do the thing where they have to convince people to read the book, which
they
is
don't
really
know
hard.
it's there until I like show them, hey, there's a thing that you might like. They don't just magically know this book exists.
So other than that being a challenge, do you have any other challenges as a writer, either in terms of like the administrative side of stuff where you're actually preparing the book for people to read, or the actual creative process?
My entire writing group knows I hate fight scenes.
Oh, okay.
Every time I come up to one, I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? And I will complain until it is done. And they're like, we know, Caitlin. We know you're writing a fight scene. I'm like, I know, but I need you to know I hate it.
But is it that the desire for the fight scene to be in the book is much, much stronger than your desire not to do it?
They're so cool.
They are cool.
Fight scenes are cool. I just like have to choreograph them, and that is hard. And in my last read through of Square Jaw Jordan, because it's a Western, so there's quite a bit of fighting in it. Yes, and I got to this one scene and I was like, this is really good. How did I do that? And how can I do it again? Because the other ones are not this good.
You've hit your stride. That's what it is. You've figured out.
But it was
formula.
like the first one in the book.
Oh.
And then the rest. Yeah.
So maybe everybody got tired.
I got tired.
You're everybody. You're part of everybody.
I am everybody. There's a D&D group that I like listening to, and the DM always says I'm literally everybody in the world.
But that's you as a writer. You are everybody in the world.
Literally everyone.
They're going to be tired. So fight scenes, marketing. Is there anything else that you find challenging? I just punched my microphone, so that was a loud noise for anybody. I'm so sorry.
No, those are the only things that really come to mind. Like everything else just kind of flows as a process for me. You mentioned my like descriptions and being immersive. Growing up, I did a lot of theater. So like I kind of stopped when I got to college, but that's sort of how I approach writing, is like I become the character. Okay, I'm this person, I'm in this scene. What do I feel, both like with my five senses and emotionally? And that's kind of how I approach it.
It definitely comes across.
Oh, thank you. And then being more of a pantser than a plotter, I'm like, I've got point A, I've got point B, we'll get there somehow.
10 fight scenes later, no, I So what do you do if you get I wanted to say stage fright because you said theatre, and what I meant to say was writer's block, but I had to explain that because there was a really long pause. And I want you to know that I have been speaking English my whole life and I still find it a struggle. What happens with stage fright? Oh, I meant writer's block. I said it again. Oh,
we are writers. Well. We are not speakers.
I'm certainly not. Honestly, I don't stop, but it's never anything of worth. How do you deal with writer's block? Is what I meant to say.
When I get writer's block, the first thing I usually try is making a list.
Okay.
I don't know why, but that's what works for me. Of like, here are the things I know. Here are the questions I have, and usually just like writing that out.
It's catching. I'm so sorry.
Writing that out helps my brain just kind of like work through the problem of like, okay, what can I take of what I already know to solve the problems that I have, the questions that I have. And, you know, there are some pages in my notebook, because like I mentioned earlier, handwriting helps it more than typing, where it just like devolves into like, okay, but why? Like, how did we get here? And I have to like really take it through step by step of like, this is the character's backstory, And so that's their motivation. And so here's how that translates into this goal and like what they're doing in this scene and all that stuff. And then if that doesn't work, I actually like force myself to take a step back and step away from the project for a little bit, and just kind of let it sit and let my brain work through it on its own. Because if I am metaphorically hitting my head against a wall, it's not going to go anywhere, and I'm just going to get more and more frustrated.
Do you find it hard to tell yourself to just let it be? Or is it easy to... No,
it's pretty easy.
Probably a good thing.
I'll be like, this isn't working, so I'm going to leave it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go focus on something else for a little bit. Maybe a fan fiction.
Oh, great idea. Does it make you frustrated, or is it more defeated?
I just accept it as part of the process.
Yeah.
I've, been writing long enough that I know at some point I'll work it out. And sometimes it means that either like the idea is not where it needs to be, or sometimes I think like I'm not ready to write it. Like I haven't had the experiences I need to have yet in order for me to do justice to this work. I don't know. It's very like metaphysical. Like you just kind of got to feel it by the vibes type thing.
I mean, it totally makes sense. And I think a lot of the creative process, with whatever form that takes, whether it's writing or painting or whatever, you only know what you know, and you've only experienced what you experience. And that when you're trying to embody a character, you inevitably use your own thing, the things that you've felt and smelt and touched and heard and things like that. And it's much more difficult to sort of create a character or a situation that you've never come in contact with. Because that's what I find I get stuck on, is that I try and push myself a little bit, and I think, well, that not everybody is me, so I have to make sure that I create something that is not just the same character copy and pasted. And I find I usually get stuck on things where I'm trying to do something that I've not experienced personally before. Do you ever look back at some of your like old writing and think, what was I thinking? Or wow, I would have done that completely differently now?
Yeah. I've noticed in first drafts I tend to overwrite, and I tend to be more formal in my language. And then like in the second draft I tend to underwrite.
Interesting.
And so there are times when I'll go back to like a first draft of something, and I'm like, this is so pretentious. Just in the way it's presented. I'm like, whose formal narrator is this?
You could introduce them as like the Monopoly guy or something.
Right.
And just see how it goes. Yeah. Try that maybe one time. So are you part of any sort of groups, or you said that you had a writing group?
Yeah, I have a group on Discord. And it's just a very like casual, I know like 4 people out of the like 30 that are on there, because like anybody can invite anyone, and only a handful of people are on regularly. We try to do daily meetings as much as people can make it, but it's with schedules and stuff, it's anywhere from just me to like 5 people. And my favorite thing is that we have, and I don't know Discord well enough to tell people how to do this, so I'm sorry, but the group had already set this up before I joined. There is something called the Sprinto bot, and you like, it can time you and say like, okay, we usually do like 15-minute writing sprints, and so you say, here's my word count at the beginning, and then when it ends you put in your word count, and it tells you like how many words per minute you wrote, and it also ranks you on who wrote the most to who wrote the least.
Competitive writing.
So
I love it.
And it's just really nice because like we'll get on, we'll do a little chat, and then we'll sprint. And it's just like a really nice way to be like, this is my time to focus, and I'm not going to allow any distractions. I can do that for 15 minutes, and we'll do that like 3 times, sometimes 2 times if we're really chatty, for an hour each day.
Wow, that's really nice. So has that helped you with your development, or what have you learned from being in a group?
I really like the structure of it.
Mm-hmm.
So even when nobody else is on, I'm like, I am here in my chair writing at this time each day. No matter how much I get out. And I like to try to get like 500 words a day. I feel like that's a reasonable goal, but I'm not super picky about it. And it's just been like emotionally supportive to be in a group with other authors. Some of them are also self-published. I don't think anybody in that group is traditionally published. And some of them are still working on getting their first thing ready for publication. And it's just really supportive and fun, and like, you know, we share resources and that kind of stuff. I did try joining a local critique group in person, and I just found that the format that they had wasn't quite right for me, so I might reach out and try to find a different one.
So in what way was it? Just that it didn't motivate you, or were people overly critical but not constructive?
No, like they were pretty well constructive. It was, I think that there were too many people in it. And so as a result, because they met once every other week for a very limited period of time at the library, it was kind of just like here's my feedback for what you gave me last time, and then we had to move on to the next person. And there wasn't opportunity for discussion. And like basically the feedback that I got, the people had already emailed me. And so I'm like, I'm not feeling any cooperation here. It's just I read a thing, I give you my feedback.
Yeah.
And then I read a thing and I give you my feedback, and it's not a conversation about, okay, well, here's my intention. Do you have any suggestions for how I can get here, or anything like that?
Interesting.
Yeah.
I only ask because I'm curious, because everyone is very, very different in how they like to write, and some people like to stay very much to themselves. Some people like to work in groups. Some people enjoy the things like doing writing sprints or getting involved with, you know, different competitions or whatever. It's just interesting to see how people work, because I mean, being an extroverted person, as you are, I'm not talking about me. As you're an extroverted person, it would make a lot of sense for you to sort of thrive in an environment where people are sort of discussing and being very active with one another.
Right. Yeah, having active conversation.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. I don't want you talking to me. I don't want to talk to you. Let me sit in my little hovel with some candles and 8 to 10 dirty cups around me. I am a chaos goblin. I don't have anything. I tidy things occasionally. I think, oh, that was a lot of work. Now I can't do anything else because I'm so tired from tidying all the thousands of cups I have. I do my best work when I'm in filth. On my own. So it's just interesting, fascinating to me to sort of see everybody's different processes, because everybody is so different. It's so wild speaking to all these different writers and finding out how everyone gets from point A to point B to point Z. So, I don't know. One of them's right. I don't know which one's right.
Both of them are right, depending on where you're from.
Yeah, ZZ. I'm gonna give it a double name.
I love hearing about different authors' process. Like, here's how you work through what you need to work through, and maybe completely different from me.
Absolutely, because I was speaking to the first episode that will have gone out by the time this goes out, obviously, because this isn't the first one. Katie Carlisle. I gave a bit of advice, well, not advice, but I said, you know, I heard about this thing and it works for me. Is that if you're creating something, not to tell anyone about it, because I then have said it now, so I don't have to do it. And she said, I couldn't disagree with you more. And then she was like, I used to do that and now I don't, and I'm now produce much more work because I've given people the idea and now I'm beholden to them sort of in a way, and I have to commit to it, and otherwise I'll look like I've not completed the thing, and then there's the guilt factor. But it's yeah. It's wild, but it works for me because if I keep it secret, then I don't have to feel guilty because I don't like feeling guilty.
See, and I agree with KT, but kind of in a interesting flip because I mentioned earlier, I asked my friend to send me reactions to her beta reading, and like that fuels me. Their excitement gives me motivation to keep working on it rather than like that guilt factor of like, oh, they're expecting something from me if I don't do it now, like they're gonna hate me. It's like, no, they enjoyed it, and because they enjoyed it, now I enjoy it even more.
Oh,
And
that's nice.
that fuels me.
Yeah, I think that's great, and it sounds like you've got some very reliable, super lovely beta readers. Are they the ones that you've used for the first book?
Yeah. So I, when I was ready to publish my first book, I was part of a book club that my friends had started, and it was like me and 3 couples. My husband refused to join because he didn't want to like have deadlines for reading. He loves reading. He just didn't want to have deadlines for reading.
I get that. I feel
but I was like, hey, do you guys want to beta read my book? And they were like, yes, absolutely. And so we actually held like a book club session for their feedback instead of them giving it to me one by one. And that was like the single most validating thing in my life.
That's so nice.
Because they just like went around the circle of like, I loved this character and this part was great and like your world building and I can't stop thinking about this, and they would like bounce off of each other's ideas, and they gave me like some really valuable feedback of like, okay, I want more of this, or this needs a little more explanation. And it was just like so nice to see, one, people actually like what I'm writing, and 2, like there's this kind of consensus of most of you are agreeing that this is good, keep it, we need more of this, add something, you know, that was kind of weird, let's get rid of it. And so being able to get that feedback all at once was really, really helpful.
Wow, having a focus group must have been incredibly useful.
It was.
I tried doing a dramatic reading. Dramatic, we call it dramatic reading. There's nothing dramatic about it other than the size of the glass of wine that I drink. But for my husband and my sister-in-law, and my best friend was visiting at the time, so I did a reading, and at the end she was like, I'm so proud of you, that's amazing. But she says that about everything I do, so I don't know if that's it's worth something to me because I care about her and I love her a lot. But I was like, I need to ask strangers, I think, because then they'll be more honest with me, because everyone in my family and my friends are like, this is great, and I think you have to say that because otherwise I'm sad. And I don't want the guilt being the thing that drives your feedback. I'd rather you just told me what I needed to change.
I have given my beta readers a list of questions to kind of help like focus their feedback, and a lot of it is fairly generic that I've like tweaked. So like, you know, it's like, is the setting believable? I'm like, okay, like, is the technology in my Victorian alternate history believable? Right. But then I also have a list of like secret questions that are spoilers. So after they read, then I'm like, okay, here are some questions that I have that I couldn't ask you before because you hadn't read it yet.
Oh, that's helpful. So do they, like, is it a document that they make notes on? Do they send you messages about it?
Yeah, I give them each like their own copy of the document. So this time I sent it out as a PDF. Last time I think I did Google Docs, and that got a little confusing. So this time I just like downloaded the PDF and sent it to each person on their email. So some of them I think have like typed up a separate document. Some people have just been like, I'm reading this off of this and I'm going to tell it to you like as I'm reading it.
That's cool. That's cool. It sounds like you've got a pretty good setup for getting feedback, and at the end of the day, if you want people to read it, then you've got to ask their opinions. Right. Unfortunately. So you're not just writing it for you at that point.
It's a little like, not quite embarrassing, but it sounds a little cringe when I say it out loud, but actually like my husband gives me the best feedback.
Oh, that's nice.
He is, my husband and my best friend are my alpha readers before I give it to my beta readers, because they are like really, really good at saying like, this part in particular needs work, like this isn't working well. And I know that 1, they love me enough to be honest with me, and 2, they love me enough to be gentle with me.
Oh, Oh, that's so good.
And so they're
Approval.
really good at like providing that very honest feedback.
This has been such fun. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today. It's been really lovely to hear about your creative process, and it's always really strangely rewarding to have read a book and then get to talk to the author about how everything came about, because that's kind of the exciting part for me. And I've said this in other episodes that one of the joys of doing this project has been to pick up things that I never would have read before, because I basically just love reading horror. So going outside of that genre has been really exciting, and then to find out about the motivations behind it is just juicy. I couldn't think of another word, and that was disgusting. I'm so sorry. I meant juicy as in like really good, not moist.
No, I get it.
But yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. It's
Thank
been a
you
pleasure.
so much for having me. This has been amazing.
Oh, I hope you've had a good time.
I did.
Before I let you leave, where can I nearly said readers. They might be readers in the future. Where can our listeners find you and your work?
So my book, Mad Marienne, is on Amazon. Mm-hmm. And you can find me on Facebook under Katelyn Yates Author, or on Twitter, my handle is KYatesWriter.
Amazing, thank you. And your author feature will also be on Indiosyncrasy.com as of the 1st of January. But yeah, thank you again, and I'm sure I'll see you in the near future.
Thank you so much.